Part 1 expanded, the cruel joke. Lila Turner had always been the kind of woman people overlooked. She wasn't flashy or loud, just kind, hardworking, and invisible in a world that celebrated boldness over sincerity. At 26, she'd spent 3 years at her marketing firm quietly supporting everyone else's projects, often staying late to fix mistakes others made. Her coworkers called her Sweet Lila to her face, but behind her back, it was plain Jane. She didn't mind the whispers, or pretended not to. What hurt most was the loneliness that followed her home every night to her tiny apartment and her fading dreams. So when one of her coworkers, Jenna, suggested setting her up on a blind date, Lila hesitated. "Oh, come on, Lila," Jenna insisted, looping her arm around her. "You've been working too hard. You deserve a break, and a man." The others chimed in with giggles and knowing smiles. "He's handsome," one said. "And rich," another added with mock admiration. Lila blushed, half flattered, half wary. Still, part of her wanted to believe them. Maybe this was her chance. Someone kind, maybe even special. She agreed to the date, not knowing the cruel intention behind their sudden kindness. The next evening, she stood in front of her mirror, wearing a soft blue dress she'd never had the courage to wear before. Her chestnut hair framed her face in loose curls, and her heart thumped with nervous excitement. She arrived at Le Clairement, an elegant restaurant glowing with warm light and chatter. Waiters glided past in crisp uniforms, and a pianist played softly in the corner. It was far grander than any place she'd ever been. Her coworkers had told her date's name, James. That was all. When the host led her to a corner table, she froze. Sitting there was James Ashford, the city's most eligible bachelor, founder of Ashford Innovations, young, strikingly handsome, and impossibly out of her league. "Mr. Ashford," she stammered, unsure if this was some mistake. He looked up, confusion flickering in his deep blue eyes. But when he saw how nervous she was, his expression softened. "Yes, that's me. You must be Lila." "Yes." She smiled timidly and sat across from him. "I hope I'm not late." As dinner began, she tried to relax, though she felt every pair of eyes on her. She didn't notice the group of coworkers sitting in the far corner, hiding their laughter behind menus and phones. James, polite as ever, asked about her work, her interests, her dreams. Slowly, she began to open up, and her natural warmth shone through. For a moment, she forgot the nerves, the whispers, and the fear that she didn't belong. Then her phone buzzed on the table. Jenna. Can't believe she fell for it. Imagine thinking someone like him would date her. Tears of joy. Her blood ran cold. Her hand trembled as she read the next one. "Mark. This is gold. She's really sitting there. Poor thing doesn't even know it's a setup." Tears pricked her eyes, and her fork slipped from her hand. James's brow furrowed. "Lila, what's wrong?" She shook her head, forcing a tight smile. I'm sorry, I don't feel well. I should go." He reached out gently, his voice low. Did something happen? But she couldn't speak. The humiliation burned too deeply. She rose from the table, whispered an apology, and hurried toward the exit, her vision blurring as laughter echoed faintly behind her. Then, out of the corner of his eye, James saw the truth. The coworkers filming, the phone screens glowing with her name in cruel messages. His jaw tightened. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the marble floor. The restaurant went quiet. He walked toward their table, every step controlled but simmering with anger. "You think humiliating a kind woman is entertainment," he said coldly. "You think this makes you clever." The group fell silent, their smirks fading. James's voice dropped lower. "Dangerous. You just mocked someone who has more grace than any of you could ever fake. I hope you remember that when you realize what you've lost." With that, he tossed a few bills on his table, grabbed his coat, and strode out after Lila. Outside, snow began to fall softly over the glowing city streets. He spotted her across the street, hugging herself in the cold, shoulders shaking. "Lila," he called, running after her. She turned, startled, wiping her tears. "Please, Mr. Ashford, don't. It's fine. It was just a joke." "No," he said firmly, stopping before her. "It wasn't fine, and it wasn't a joke." The way he looked at her, steady, kind, sincere, made something inside her ache. That night, Neither of them knew it yet, but a cruel prank had just sparked the beginning of something real. Something that would make the whole world stop and watch when the millionaire fell to one knee. Lila didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the restaurant, the laughter, the phones, the pity in James Ashford's eyes. The humiliation clawed at her chest. She replayed every word, every look, until she wished she could disappear completely. By morning, she decided she'd go to work, hand in her resignation, and quietly leave the city. She couldn't bear to face her coworkers, or the whispers that would surely follow. But fate had other plans. When she arrived at the office, she felt the tension instantly. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Everyone seemed to be whispering, eyes flicking nervously toward the entrance. And then she saw him. James Ashford, in a charcoal gray suit, surrounded by silence and awe. His presence filled the room, calm, composed, but carrying an unmistakable authority. He walked through the sea of stunned employees until he stopped in front of Lila's desk. She froze, clutching her file as if it could shield her. "Miss Turner," he said softly, his voice carrying across the entire floor. "You left last night before I could tell you something important." Her face turned red. "Mr. Ashford, you really don't need to." He shook his head. "I do." Then, to everyone's shock, he got down on one knee. Gasps rippled through the room. "Mr. Ashford, please, don't," she whispered, her eyes wide. He smiled faintly and reached into his pocket, not for a ring, but for a small, navy blue box embossed with his company's logo. "I'm not proposing marriage," he said, his tone warm but commanding. "I'm proposing a chance. You're intelligent, capable, and far too kind for a place that doesn't value you. So, Miss Turner, would you accept my offer to become my personal executive assistant at Ashford Innovations?" The room fell completely silent. Lila blinked in disbelief, her mind spinning. Her coworkers, the very people who'd humiliated her, stood frozen, mouths open, faces drained of color. Jenna's phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. Why me?" Lila finally managed to whisper. "Because," James said, standing up and holding her gaze, "you handled cruelty with grace. I saw the kind of person you are. And people like you are rare." Her lips trembled. "You saw me at my worst." He smiled gently. "No, Lila, I saw you at your best." Tears welled in her eyes. The room blurred as applause began, soft at first, then spreading through those who weren't part of the prank. But the guilty ones could only stare, faces flushed with shame. James turned toward them, his expression now cold and sharp. "To those who think humiliating someone makes you powerful, let this be your reminder that kindness is strength. Cruelty is weakness." Then he turned back to Lila, his voice softening. "What do you say?" Lila hesitated only for a second before nodding through her tears. "Yes, I'd love to." The applause grew louder, echoing through the entire floor. James smiled, offering his hand. "Then it's settled. You start Monday." As they walked toward the elevator together, Jenna and the others exchanged panicked looks. Within hours, an email from HR would circulate, an investigation into workplace harassment and misconduct. None of them would laugh again. When the elevator doors closed, Lila turned to James. "You didn't have to do all this," she said softly. "You don't even know me." He looked at her, a small, sincere smile playing on his lips. "Maybe not yet, but I'd like to." Lila felt her heart skip. "You mean, as my boss?" He chuckled. "For now." She laughed through the last of her tears, and in that quiet moment, something shifted between them, an unspoken promise that their story wasn't over. Weeks later, the city would buzz with a viral video, the millionaire who proposed to a girl everyone mocked. But for Lila and James, it was never about revenge or fame. It was about how something cruel and heartless could turn into something extraordinary. And how, sometimes, love begins with a single act of courage in the face of humiliation. Would you like me to expand part 2 next, with the proposal scene, the revenge twist on the bullies, and the start of their real romance?